The sun had barely risen when a simple man decided to leave home with an uneasy heart. "I want to be treated like anyone else," he murmured before entering the bank he himself had founded. There, dressed as he had always been, he was received with disdain by those who had forgotten the institution's purpose. But what happened when they discovered who he truly was would forever change the fate of that place. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching from. Now on with the story. The sun had barely risen when Jacob Smith awoke that Thursday morning. His weary eyes opened slowly, accustomed to the light that was beginning to flood the simple room through the wooden window. At 63, the man's face bore the marks of a lifetime dedicated to hard work. Deep wrinkles around his eyes told stories of days under the scorching sun of rural Kansas, in the small town of Oak Creek, where he was born and raised between dirt floors and the hope for better days. He got up slowly, feeling the weight of the years in his joints, but with the same resolve as always. He put on the worn-out boots that were beside his bed and walked to the farmhouse kitchen. The house, though comfortable now, maintained the simplicity that had always been part of its essence. No unnecessary luxuries, no ostentation, just the essentials organized and clean, the way his late wife Constance had always liked to keep it. It had been 5 years since she was gone, taking with her the joy that had illuminated those rooms. Since then, Jacob had lived only for his work and for the purpose he had built over decades, to help those in need. This was how he honored her memory, by doing the good they had always dreamed of doing together. He prepared the strong black coffee, the way he had learned as a boy, when he wasn't even sure if he would have anything to eat the next day. He sat at the rustic wooden table and let his thoughts wander to the past. He remembered when he was only 7 years old and already waking up before the sun to help old Sebastian on the neighboring farm. In those days, there was no childhood, there was survival. His father, had left early, leaving him and his mother to their own devices, and she had done what she could until her strength failed her. After that, it was just him, the will to live, and the certainty that giving up was not an option. He took the last sip of coffee and stood up. He needed to make his morning rounds on the farm before heading into the city. For the past few days, something had been troubling his heart. Stray comments, uncomfortable glances, words that reached his ears like unsettling whispers. People were talking about the Hope Bank, the financial institution he had founded 15 years ago with the purpose of transforming lives, just as his had once been transformed. The idea for the bank was born from an old pain. Jacob had never forgotten the day when, as an adult, after saving for years working on other people's farms, he tried to get a loan to buy his first piece of land. Dressed in his simple clothes, a straw hat on his head, he went to a bank in the city. The humiliation he suffered that day scarred his soul forever. Scornful looks, stifled laughter, condescending questions. They treated him as if he were less than nothing, as if a man from the country had no right to dream. He left with empty hands and a broken heart, but with a silent promise. If he ever had the means, he would create something different, and he did. After years of arduous work, he managed to buy that piece of land that many thought was unproductive. With dedication, patience, and the knowledge he had accumulated from watching the more experienced farmers, he transformed that soil into one of the most prosperous rural properties in the region. The cattle multiplied, the crops flourished, the business grew. With each new success, Jacob remained the same, humble, hard-working, simple. The fortune he built did not change who he was on the inside. When he finally decided to open the Hope Bank, he made sure it would be different. A place where people like him from humble beginnings could find real opportunities, fair credit, genuine guidance, respect above all else. He hired people who shared this vision, forming a team committed to the mission of serving, not judging. And for years it worked exactly as he had dreamed. But in recent months, something had changed. The conversations that reached his ears were disturbing. Mrs. Marlene, a farmer he had known since childhood, had mentioned at the market that she had been poorly treated at the bank. Mr. Joseph, the owner of a small general store, said he felt ashamed to enter the branch because the employees treated him with coldness. Young entrepreneurs seeking support to start businesses reported absurd barriers, nonsensical requirements, and veiled humiliations. Jacob wanted to believe they were misunderstandings. After all, he trusted Derek Evans, the CEO he had hired 8 years ago. Derek had come with excellent recommendations, an impeccable resume, and experience in major financial institutions. He was the one who had modernized the bank, implemented efficient systems, and expanded operations. The reports he presented were always positive: growing profits, an expanded client portfolio, successful operations. Jacob, busy with the farm and trusting the numbers, had never questioned the methods. But now the whispers were becoming screams in his conscience. He needed to see with his own eyes what was happening. Not as the owner, not with prior announcement, not with a red carpet and rehearsed speeches. He wanted to be treated like any ordinary person. He wanted to feel firsthand what his clients were feeling. He walked through the farm's pastures, watching the cattle graze peacefully. Those animals represented every drop of sweat he had shed throughout his life. He stopped before a newly built fence and rested his hands on the rough wood. The morning wind carried the smell of damp earth, and for a moment he let himself be carried away by memories. He remembered Constance, his beloved wife, and how she had always been his fortress. He had met her when he was just a young man with nothing but dreams. She was the daughter of a small-town merchant and could have chosen someone with more possessions, but she saw something in him that few others did: a determined and honest heart. They married in a simple ceremony, and she accompanied him every step of the journey. She worked by his side, believed when no one else did, dried his tears on difficult nights, and celebrated every small victory as if it were the greatest achievement in the world. When they finally prospered, Constance never lost her humility. She continued to frequent the same markets, talk to the same people, and help those in need. It was she who encouraged him to create the bank. It was she who said that their wealth only made sense if it could light the way for others. And when she passed, leaving a void that nothing could fill, Jacob promised he would honor that legacy. But was he truly honoring it? The worry grew inside him like an expanding shadow. He went back inside the house, changed, and put on his simplest work clothes: faded blue jeans, a long-sleeved plaid shirt, worn-out boots, and the straw hat he had always worn. He looked at himself in the mirror and saw exactly what he was: a countryman marked by time and labor. No sign of wealth, no hint of power, just Jacob, the farmer. He decided that on that day he would visit the main branch of the Hope Bank in Wichita, the nearest big city where the headquarters was located. He would enter as a regular customer, request a simple service, and observe how he was treated. The truth, he knew, always emerged when the masks came off. He got into his old pickup truck, the same one he used to go to town for supplies, and drove down the dirt road that led to the highway. The surrounding landscape was familiar: green fields, scattered trees, the infinite blue sky. As he drove, his mind wouldn't stop working. What if the comments were true? What if the bank he had created to welcome people was now rejecting them? What if everything he had fought for had been distorted? The trip took a little over an hour. Upon arriving in Wichita, he felt the contrast between the city's fast pace and the countryside's tranquility. He parked the truck on a side street and walked to the Hope Bank's main branch. The building was modern, with mirrored glass and an imposing facade. As he approached, he noticed the signs at the entrance: Premium Club, VIP service, exclusivity for select clients. Those didn't exist when the bank was inaugurated. He took a deep breath and went inside. The interior was spacious, air-conditioned, with sophisticated decor. On one side, there was an area separated by glass partitions where well-dressed clients were served in comfortable armchairs, with coffee being offered and cordial smiles all around. On the other side, a common line, where simpler-looking people waited on their feet, with no additional comfort under the hurried glances of the tellers. Jacob felt his stomach clench. He went to the common line and stood there, waiting his turn. He observed everything around him. The employees circulating in the VIP area were attentive, patient, and helpful. Those serving the common area seemed rushed, indifferent, almost annoyed by the client's presence. An elderly woman, likely a farmer like so many he knew, was trying to explain something to a young teller who kept interrupting her impatiently, speaking in technical terms that confused her even more. When it was finally his turn, he was called by a young man no older than 25, with gel in his hair and a bored expression on his face. Jacob approached the counter and, in the calm voice he always used, said he would like to check his account balance and perhaps make a simple transaction. The teller looked him up and down, a look Jacob knew well. It was the look that said, "You don't belong here." The young man sighed and mechanically asked for his documents. Jacob handed over his driver's license and social security card. The teller typed the information into the computer, but soon frowned. "We need more information," he said, without even looking at Jacob. "Do you have a recent proof of address and proof of income? Maybe it's better if you come back another day with all the documentation, because we can't proceed without it." Jacob explained that he had lived on the farm for decades and that the address was registered in the system. The teller rolled his eyes almost imperceptibly, but Jacob noticed. The young man asked a few more questions, all with a tone that mixed impatience and contempt. He suggested that perhaps the account didn't even exist, that there might be an error in the registration, that perhaps Jacob should look for a smaller branch, one more suited to his profile. While this was happening, Jacob noticed that in the VIP area, a man in a suit entered and was greeted like a celebrity. Coffee, handshakes, broad smiles. The contrast was stark and painful. That's when an older employee, who had been watching the scene from a distance, approached. Her name was Evelyn, and she had worked at the bank since the beginning. She knew Jacob's story, knew the institution's original purpose, and for the past few months had felt a growing anguish, seeing it all transform into something she no longer recognized. "Excuse me," she said politely to her colleague. "May I help?" The young man shrugged and walked away, clearly relieved to be rid of the situation. Evelyn sat down in front of Jacob, and with a genuine smile asked how she could help him. There was something in her eyes that conveyed true kindness, and Jacob felt a momentary sense of relief. She took the documents and began typing into the system. Suddenly her expression changed. Her eyes widened, her hands froze over the keyboard, and she looked at Jacob with a mixture of surprise and recognition. She checked again, as if she couldn't believe what she was seeing. Then, discreetly, she called another colleague, Rita, who had also been with the institution since its early years. Rita approached, looked at the computer screen and turned pale. They exchanged a look, trying to maintain their composure. This simple man, dressed in work clothes, treated with disdain by arrogant colleagues, was Jacob Smith, the founder, the owner, the man who had created all of this with a pure heart and the intention to help. "Mr. Smith," Evelyn whispered, trembling slightly, "are you here to—" "I just wanted to be served like anyone else," he interrupted, his voice serene but heavy with meaning. "I wanted to feel what you make others feel." In that moment, the silence that fell between them was more eloquent than any words. Evelyn and Rita knew exactly what this meant. They knew something was about to change, that the truth was being revealed, and that the bank would never be the same again. Jacob then asked them to call the CEO. He said he wanted to speak with all the branch's employees. It wasn't a request. It was a summons. And in the eyes of that simple man, marked by time and labor, there was a determination that left no room for doubt. Evelyn stood up, her legs shaking, and went to the director's office. She knocked on the door and entered. Derek Evans was sitting in his leather armchair reviewing reports. He was a middle-aged man, always impeccably dressed, with perfectly coiffed graying hair and an air of superiority he wore like armor. "Mr. Evans," Evelyn said, her voice choked with emotion, "Mr. Jacob Smith is here. He wants to speak with all the employees, now." Derek looked up from his papers, irritated by the interruption. "Jacob, why didn't anyone tell me he was coming? Did you prepare coffee? Did you set up the meeting room?" "No, sir. He arrived as a regular customer. He was served in the line. And he was not treated well." The color drained from Derek's face. He shot up from his chair, adjusted his suit, and practically ran to the main hall. When he saw Jacob there, in his simple clothes, sitting in a waiting chair like any other client, he felt the ground open up beneath his feet. He tried to disguise his shock, forced a wide smile, and walked toward him with open arms. "Mr. Smith, what a wonderful surprise! Why didn't you let me know you were coming? We would have prepared everything, received you as you deserve." Jacob stood up slowly, looked Derek in the eyes, and said with a firm voice, "I was received exactly as I deserved, as anyone who comes in here deserves to be received. And now I want to talk to everyone. Gather all the employees of this branch now." The tone left no room for argument. Derek, trying to hide his nervousness, gave orders for everyone to assemble in the hall. Managers, tellers, assistants, security guards, cleaning staff. Everyone. In a few minutes, dozens of people stood there, many curious, others apprehensive, some already with a guilty conscience. Jacob positioned himself in the center of the hall, took off his hat, and held it with both hands. The silence was absolute. Even the customers in the branch stopped to watch. And then, with a measured voice heavy with emotion, he began to speak. He began to tell his story, to share his pain, to reveal his purpose. And every word that left his mouth was a seed of transformation planted in that place that had once been his dream and now needed to be reborn. What happened next would change not only that branch, but the life of every person present. Because Jacob Smith was not just the owner of a bank. He was a man who understood dignity, respect, and opportunity. And he was about to show that values are not for sale, not to be negotiated, not to be abandoned. Not for all the money in the world. The silence that filled the hope. Bank branch was dense, almost palpable. Dozens of eyes were fixed on Jacob Smith, some curious, others apprehensive, many already heavy with guilt. He remained there in the center of the hall, holding his straw hat with both calloused hands, as if that simple object were his only anchor in the moment of truth that was about to unfold. He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the years and memories pressing on his chest. He looked around, observing each face, each expression. There were those who knew him from corporate photos, those who had never seen him in person, and the few who had been there from the beginning, like Evelyn and Rita, who now had tears in their eyes knowing what was coming. Derek Evans tried to maintain his composure, but the sweat beginning to form on his forehead betrayed him. Beside him, other managers exchanged nervous glances, adjusted their ties, and crossed their arms in a defensive posture. They knew something was wrong, but they still didn't grasp the magnitude of what was happening. "My name is Jacob Smith," he began, his voice measured but firm. "Many of you may not know me personally. Some of you know who I am only from reports, formal meetings, the numbers that reach my desk. But today I am here as I came into the world, simple, without disguises, without titles to protect me. I am here as a man who was once a child and had nothing but the will to survive." He paused, letting the words echo through the room. A customer who was still in the branch, an elderly woman, quietly moved closer to hear better, touched by the sincerity emanating from the man. "I was born in Oak Creek in a house so small it could barely fit the family. My father left early and my mother did what she could until her strength gave out. At 7, I was already working. I would wake up before sunrise and go help old Sebastian on his farm, who paid me with food and sometimes a few coins. There was no time to play, no time to be a child. There was only work and the hunger that ached in my stomach when work was scarce." Some of the younger employees who had never stopped to think about the bank's origin began to feel a tightness in their chests. The story they were hearing wasn't just about one man. It was about millions of Americans born without choices, who had to fight for every crumb of opportunity. "I grew up seeing humble people treated as if they were less than nothing," Jacob continued, his voice now slightly choked with emotion. "I saw wealthy farmers treat their workers like animals. I saw city merchants look down on those who came from the country. I saw doors close for anyone who didn't have an important last name, nice clothes, or a refined way of speaking. And every time, I saw that something inside me rebelled, because I knew that behind those simple clothes, that rustic manner, that thick accent, there were people of value, honest people, hard-working people, people who deserved respect." Derek shifted uncomfortably, realizing where this speech was heading. He tried to interrupt with forced politeness. "Mr. Smith, you don't need to." "Yes, I do," Jacob cut him off, looking directly at him. I need everyone here to understand why this bank exists. I need you to understand what I felt when many years ago, after saving every penny I could, I went to a bank in the big city to try to get a loan to buy my first piece of land. The emotion in his voice was raw, and he had to pause for a moment, swallowing hard. No one dared to interrupt. The air was thick with anticipation, with the naked truth being laid bare. I walked into that bank full of hope, with my documents in hand and my dream in my heart. I was dressed much like I am now, work clothes, a worn-out hat, dirt on my boots. And do you know what I received? Laughter, scornful looks, humiliating questions. They treated me like a beggar, as if I had no right to be there. They said a countryman didn't fit the credit profile, that I would never be able to pay it back, that I should just give up and keep working for others. I left that place with my head held low and my heart in pieces. A tear ran down Evelyn's face. She had always known this story, but hearing it again, here, in this context, gave it an even greater weight. Rita held her hand, also moved. But I didn't give up, Jacob went on, lifting his head with dignity. I kept working, saving, scrimping. I bought that land with the money I earned, without any help from a bank, and I turned that piece of dry ground into something productive. I worked day and night, without a day off, without rest. My wife Constance worked by my side. She believed in me when no one else did. And slowly, very slowly, we prospered. He looked around again, making sure everyone was paying attention. Some customers still in the branch had completely stopped what they were doing to listen. A security guard near the door had tears in his eyes, identifying with the story of perseverance. When I finally had resources, when life finally smiled on me, I could have done many things with that money. I could have bought mansions, imported cars, traveled the world. But do you know what Constance and I decided to do? We decided to create this bank. We decided to create a place where people like me, simple, hard-working people, could find what I didn't find that terrible day: respect, opportunity, dignity. His voice grew more intense, and some employees lowered their heads, unable to meet the gaze that now held a mixture of disappointment and determination. This bank was founded with a sacred purpose. It wasn't created to profit at the expense of the weak. It wasn't created to treat the rich and poor differently. It wasn't created to humiliate those already humiliated by life. It was created to be different, to be a place where anyone, no matter their appearance, their origin, their way of speaking, could walk in and be treated with dignity. His tone rose slightly, not in aggression but in passion. It was impossible not to feel the emotion overflowing from every word. But what did I see here today? What did I experience myself just a few minutes ago? I saw exactly what I swore would never happen. I saw the disrespect that scarred me forever being practiced here, in the very place I built to combat it. I was treated with disdain, with impatience, with contempt. Meanwhile, over there, well-dressed people were being received like kings. Coffee, smiles, attention, two worlds separated by an invisible line called appearance. He pointed to the VIP area, and all eyes turned toward it. The clients being served there felt uncomfortable, some even embarrassed, realizing for the first time the privilege they enjoyed without question. "Who authorized this?" Jacob continued, now looking directly at Derek. "Who decided this bank would have two doors, one for the rich and one for the poor? Who thought it was okay to create barriers, absurd requirements and unnecessary bureaucracy to push away those who need help the most?" Derek tried to defend himself, his voice trembling slightly. "Mr. Smith, you have to understand, the market has changed. We need to be competitive. Premium clients bring more profit. They allow the bank to grow. It's business strategy. It's a betrayal." Jacob interrupted, with a firmness that sent a chill through the room. "It's a betrayal of the purpose that gave birth to all of this. Do you think I don't know that wealthy clients are profitable? Do you think I'm naive? Of course I know. But never, ever, could that justify treating those with less poorly. Never. Profit cannot come at the cost of someone's dignity." Derek tried to argue again, But Jacob raised his hand, signaling for silence. He wasn't finished. "Do you know what my wife used to tell me? She said that money only has value if it serves to light the way for other people. She said that wealth without purpose is a prison. And she was right. Constance passed away 5 years ago, and every day I ask myself if I am honoring the legacy we built together. Today, for the first time, I'm afraid the answer is no." The emotion overwhelmed him, and he had to pause, discreetly wiping his eyes. This strong man, who had faced life with courage, was there exposing his vulnerability, his fear of having failed the values he had always championed. Evelyn could no longer hold back her tears. She took a step forward and her voice choked, said, "Mr. Smith, many of us tried to keep the original purpose alive, but we were silenced, pressured. Those who questioned were threatened with being fired. Those who treated everyone equally were criticized for wasting time. They created a system where only those who adapted to the new culture survived." Rita also stepped forward. "It's true, sir. Many times I wanted to speak up, to report it. But I was afraid. I have children to raise, bills to pay, and I was a coward. I was a coward for not having the courage to defend what was right." Other voices began to emerge. A young teller who had only been working for 6 months told how she was trained to direct clients of simpler appearance to less profitable services, while well-dressed clients received special offers. An administrative assistant revealed that there were different service targets, with higher bonuses for those who brought in high-net-worth clients and penalties for those who wasted time with others. An intermediate manager named Michael, who had been with the institution for 4 years, also found the courage to speak. "Mr. Smith, when I started here, I believed in the bank's purpose, but gradually I was indoctrinated into a culture of results at any cost. They created absurd metrics, cruel rankings, competitions that turned us into machines. Anyone who complained was labeled as weak, uncommitted. And I, to survive, ended up becoming part of it. I am deeply ashamed." Jacob listened to each testimony attentively, his heart breaking as he realized how much his creation had been deformed. But he also felt a spark of hope, seeing that there were still people there who held the ember of the original purpose. Derek tried one last time to justify himself, this time with more desperation in his voice. "Mr. Smith, all banks do this. It's the market. If we don't, we'll be swallowed by the competition. You're being too idealistic. The world has changed." "The world hasn't changed that much, Derek," Jacob replied sadly. "What changed was you, and what changed was the soul of this place, because the market doesn't force anyone to be cruel. The market doesn't demand that we humiliate people. That is a choice, and you chose wrong." Then Jacob did something no one expected. He walked to a nearby bench and sat down, as if he were too tired to remain standing. He rested his arms on his legs and stared at the floor for a few seconds. The silence was profound. Everyone waited for what would come next. When he looked up again, there was a renewed determination in his eyes. He stood up slowly and looked at each person present. "Starting today, this bank is going to change. Or rather, it's going to go back to being what it always should have been. And anyone who doesn't agree with this change, anyone who cannot treat every human being with respect, is free to find another place. I won't force anyone to stay. But those who stay will understand that there is no room for discrimination here, no room for privilege based on appearance, no room for humiliation." Derek stepped forward, trying to maintain some authority. "Mr. Smith, with all due respect, you can't just undo years of structuring. We have processes, protocols, implemented systems. We have agreements with partners who—" "I can and I will," Jacob cut him off. "You're fired, Derek. As of this moment, you are no longer the CEO of this bank." A shocked silence fell over the room. Derek turned pale, unable to believe what he had just heard. All the managers who implemented this policy of segregation, who created barriers for the most humble, who trained employees to discriminate, are also terminated. You can see the HR department to arrange your severance. The shock was visible on the faces of at least a dozen people. Some tried to argue, others were struck dumb, unable to react. Jacob then turned to Evelyn and Rita. "You two will take over the temporary management of this branch, along with all those who have kept the essence of our purpose alive. I want you to build a new team, train new employees, and undo every cruel policy that was implemented here, and I want this to happen in every branch of the Hope Bank." "Mr. Smith," Evelyn said, still emotional, "I don't know if I'm prepared for—" "You are," he assured her, "because you have something that no business school teaches. You have a heart, you have empathy, you know what is right, and that is worth more than any diploma hanging on a wall." Rita also tried to protest, saying she had no management experience, but Jacob was firm. "You will build the experience. The important thing is that you have the right values, and I will be here to support, to guide, to ensure you don't lose your way." Then he looked at all the remaining employees. "Starting today, each of you has a choice. You can embark on this reconstruction and be part of something truly transformative, or you can leave and find another place that only values numbers without caring about people. I won't judge anyone who chooses to leave, but those who stay must understand that here we will treat the beggar and the millionaire with the same respect, because they are both human beings, and that is all that matters." A client who had been in the VIP area stood up and began to applaud. He was a successful local businessman who had been with the branch for years. Other clients joined in, and soon the entire hall was applauding. Some employees were crying, others smiled in relief, feeling that there was finally hope for things to make sense again. Derek and the other fired managers left the branch in silence, heads down, carrying not only their ruined careers, but also the shame of having betrayed something so precious. When the hall finally quieted down, Jacob asked everyone to return to their posts, but differently. He asked them to tear down the partitions that separated the VIP area from the common area. He asked them to remove the signs of exclusivity. He asked them to treat every person who walked in as a human being worthy of respect and attention. Then he turned to leave, but before crossing the threshold, he stopped and looked back one last time. And with a gentle voice, he said something that would be etched in the memory of everyone present. "Always remember, behind every person who walks in here, there is a story. There are dreams, fears, struggles, hopes, and everyone, absolutely everyone, deserves to be welcomed. Because that is what I didn't have, and that is what I swore to offer." He left the branch under the emotional gaze of dozens of people. He walked to his old pickup truck, got in, and sat there for a few minutes, letting the tears run freely. He cried for the pain he had felt, for the disappointment of seeing his dream distorted, but also for the renewed hope that there was still time to fix it. As he drove back to the farm, the sun was beginning to set on the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. And for the first time in months, Jacob felt he had done the right thing, that Constance, wherever she was, would be proud, that their legacy would not die, that there was still a chance to transform lives, to open paths, to give back to the world a little of the hope that had once been denied to him. The journey was just beginning. The weeks following that momentous day were a period of intense transformation at the Hope Bank. Evelyn and Rita took over the management of the main branch with a mixture of fear and determination. They had never held leadership positions, never managed teams, but they carried something more valuable than any technical experience. They carried the original purpose in their hearts. The first decision they made was to call a meeting with all the employees who remained. There were about 40 people, some who had worked there for years, others who had recently joined and were still discovering what the bank represented. They sat in a circle, without hierarchy, without distinction, just people sharing the challenge of rebuilding something precious. Evelyn began to speak, her voice still uncertain but honest. "Folks, I don't have all the answers. I don't know how to manage a bank branch the way the books teach, but I know what's right. I know what Mr. Smith dreamed of when he created all of this, and I know that each of you is here because, in some way, you believe we can do things differently." Rita added, "We're going to make mistakes, we certainly will, but we'll make them trying. To do the right thing, trying to do good, and that's already better than succeeding by doing the wrong thing." Those simple words deeply touched everyone present. Michael, the manager who had confessed his shame on the day of the revelation, raised his hand. "I want to help. I want to fix the mistakes I made. Teach me how to do things differently." Others also spoke up. A teller named Julia, a young woman of just 22, shared how she had joined the bank full of dreams of making a difference, only to be molded by a system that turned her into someone she no longer recognized. Now she wanted a chance to be who she truly was again. An administrative assistant named Paul revealed that his father was a farmer who had been humiliated at another bank years ago. When he got the job at Hope Bank, he believed it would be different. He was devastated to realize it wasn't. But now, with the changes, he felt he could finally honor his father's memory. For days, the team worked on a complete restructuring of the processes. They removed all unnecessary bureaucratic barriers. They eliminated the distinctions between clients. They created service protocols based on respect and dignity, not on account value or appearance. It was laborious, challenging, but also liberating. Jacob visited the branch almost every day, not to inspect, but to support. He sat with the employees, listened to their doubts, shared stories, and offered guidance. His constant presence was a living reminder of the purpose that could not be forgotten. One afternoon, while walking through the branch, Jacob witnessed a scene that moved him deeply. Julia, the young teller, was helping an elderly woman fill out a form. The woman had trouble seeing, and Julia read. Every line with patience explained each technical term in simple language and held her trembling hand as she signed. There was no rush, no impatience, just genuine care. When the woman left, thanking her with tears in her eyes, Jacob approached Julia. "What you just did," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "is what it means to work here. You didn't just process a document. You honored that woman's life. You made her feel important. And that is priceless." Julia smiled, her eyes also welling up. "Thank you for giving us the chance to be human again, Mr. Smith. I had forgotten how good that feels. But not everything was rosy. The change brought resistance. Some clients accustomed to privileges complained about the loss of exclusive treatment. They threatened to close their accounts, spoke ill of the bank on social media, and tried to pressure them to revert to the old model. Evelyn faced moments of doubt, wondering if they were doing the right thing by risking the loss of important clients. It was on one of those difficult nights that Jacob invited her for coffee at the farm. They sat on the porch under the starry sky, and he shared something he had never told anyone before. "When Constance and I decided to create the bank," he said, looking at the stars, "many people said we were crazy. They said a bank for the poor wouldn't work, that we would lose all our money, that we should invest in something safer. But Constance looked me in the eyes and said something I'll never forget. She said, 'Jacob, if we're doing this just to make money, we don't need to. We already have money. But if we're doing this to change lives, then it's worth every risk, because at the end of your life, no one remembers the money they saved, but everyone remembers the lives they touched.'" Evelyn wiped away a tear. "She was incredible, wasn't she?" "She was," Jacob agreed. "And do you know why I trust you and Rita? Because you have that same essence. You understand that a person's value isn't in their account balance, but in the size of their heart." That conversation gave Evelyn the strength she needed to carry on. She returned to the branch the next day with renewed determination. And something extraordinary began to happen as news of the bank's transformation spread. New clients started to arrive. Simple people who had been rejected by other institutions, young entrepreneurs with brilliant ideas but no resources, families who needed an opportunity. One of these stories left a profound mark on the entire team. It was a cloudy Thursday when a woman named Claudia entered the branch. She was about 40, with a tired face and simple but clean clothes. She approached the counter timidly, as if expecting to be rejected at any moment. Rita greeted her with a genuine smile. "Good morning, how can I help you?" Claudia hesitated, the words struggling to come out. I heard that here you help people like me, people who don't have much but have dreams." Rita's heart ached. "Of course we do. Tell me about your dream." And Claudia told her story. She was a single mother of 3, working as a house cleaner for 20 years. She had always dreamed of opening a small snack bar because she made delicious pastries that all her neighbors praised. She had even found an affordable commercial spot in a working-class neighborhood, But no bank would give her credit. They said she didn't have enough collateral, that the risk was too high, that she should just give up. Rita listened to every word attentively, taking notes. Then she said something Claudia never expected to hear. "Let's make it happen." In the following weeks, Rita and the team worked on Claudia's case. They developed a simple but solid business plan, provided guidance on basic financial management, and connected her with reliable suppliers. And they approved the credit she needed to get started. When Claudia received the news, she broke down in tears right there in the branch. She couldn't believe it. After so many closed doors, so much humiliation, someone had finally believed in her. She hugged Rita tightly, repeating thank you like a prayer. 3 months later, the snack bar opened. Jacob made a point of being there, as did Evelyn, Rita, and several other bank employees. The small establishment was decorated simply, but with a lot of love. Claudia had prepared a special table for them with the best pastries she had ever made. As he ate a delicious cheese roll, Jacob looked around and saw the place filled with neighbors, Claudia's friends, simple people celebrating this collective victory. And he said to Evelyn, "This is why it's all worth it. Look what an opportunity can do. We didn't just change her life, we changed the lives of her children, her customers, the entire community." But there was still a greater challenge ahead. In some of the smaller rural branches, older managers resisted the changes. They argued that Jacob was being too idealistic, that the new procedures slowed down service, that they would lose their competitive edge. It came to Jacob's attention that some were discreetly sabotaging the new directives. He decided to take a trip to all the branches, not as an inspector, but as a storyteller. In each place he visited, he gathered the employees and shared his journey, his purpose, his vision. He spoke about Constance, about the values they built together, about the true meaning of success. During one of these visits, at a branch in Topeka, he met a particularly resistant manager named Frederick. He was a technically competent professional, but cold, focused only on numerical results. He saw no point in wasting time with clients who brought little profit. Jacob asked to speak with him privately. They sat in a small room, and Frederick immediately went on the defensive. "Mr. Smith, with all due respect, these new procedures are hurting our efficiency. We're missing targets, losing bonuses, losing—" "Losing what, Frederick?" Jacob interrupted calmly. "Losing our humanity? Have you ever thought about what you gain when you genuinely help someone?" Frederick fell silent, not knowing how to respond. "Do you have children?" Jacob asked. "I do." "Two. And what if one day one of them needs help, an opportunity, and is treated with contempt because of their appearance, their background, their way of speaking? How would you feel?" Frederick swallowed hard, the weight of the question falling on him like a stone. Jacob continued, his voice softer now. "Every person who walks into that bank is someone's child, Frederick, someone's dream, someone's hope. And when you treat those people with respect, you're not just following a procedure. You're changing destinies. You're honoring lives. That is priceless. That doesn't fit on any profit report." For the first time in years, Frederick felt something break inside him. A barrier he had built to protect himself, to be efficient, to climb the corporate ladder, but one that in the process had made him insensitive. Unexpected tears began to roll down his face. I lost my way, Mr. Smith. I became a machine." "Then go back to being human," Jacob said, touching his shoulder. "It's not too late." That conversation transformed Frederick. He became one of the most dedicated leaders in implementing the new directives, an example that change is possible when the heart is touched. Meanwhile, at the main branch in Wichita, Evelyn and Rita faced an unexpected personal challenge. Michael, the manager who had confessed his shame and asked to be part of the reconstruction, began to develop feelings for Julia, the young teller. It was something pure, respectful, but complicated by the age difference and the hierarchy. Michael was 38, divorced and had a teenage daughter. Julia was 22 and just starting her life. He knew it was inappropriate, that it could be misinterpreted, so he kept his feelings to himself. But it was impossible not to notice the sparkle in his eyes when she spoke, the smile that involuntarily formed when she entered the room. Julia, for her part, admired Michael deeply. She saw in him an example of transformation, of the courage to admit mistakes and start over. But she also didn't know how to handle her growing attraction. Rita, always observant, noticed the tension between them. One afternoon she called Julia to talk. "You can speak honestly with me," she said gently. "What's going on?" Julia poured her heart out. She said she was confused, that she knew the risks, but that she couldn't ignore what she felt. "I don't know if I'm being foolish, Rita. I'm afraid of messing everything up." Rita hugged her. "Feelings are not wrong, dear. What matters is how we act on them. Talk to him. Be honest with each other. And if it's something real, find the right way to live, without compromising anyone's work. If you were in Rita's place, would you have given the same advice or acted differently? Tell us in the comments." That night, Michael and Julia talked. It was uncomfortable, vulnerable, but necessary. They decided they would wait. They would let their feelings settle, focus on rebuilding the bank, and if, after some time, it still made sense, they would take it one step at a time. It was mature, respectful, and right. As these stories unfolded, Jacob continued his routine between the farm and his visits to the bank, but something within him was beginning to change. The loneliness he had felt since losing Constance seemed a little less heavy. Seeing so many lives being transformed, seeing the purpose being restored, brought him a renewed sense of meaning. One Saturday afternoon, as he was walking on his farm, he heard a woman's voice calling his name. He turned and saw Evelyn walking toward him. She had come to visit to discuss some bank matters, but also because she sensed that Jacob needed company. They sat on the porch, drank coffee, and talked about everything, about the farm, about the bank, about life. Evelyn, who was 56 and also a widow, understood the loneliness he carried. They had become friends over those intense weeks, and there was a connection between them that went beyond the professional. "You miss her every day, don't you?" Evelyn asked softly. "Every single day," Jacob confirmed. "Sometimes I wake up and for a second I forget she's gone. Then reality hits and it hurts all over again." "I understand," Evelyn said. "I lost my husband 8 years ago, and for a long time I thought I would never feel anything but emptiness. But slowly I learned that life goes on, and that honoring those who have passed doesn't mean we have to stop living." Jacob looked at her, and for the first time in years, he felt something different. It wasn't infatuation, it wasn't romance. It was just the possibility of not being completely alone, of having someone who understood, who shared his values, who was walking in the same direction. "Thank you for being here, Evelyn, for the bank and for me." She smiled. "Always, Jacob. Always." The sun set on the horizon, painting the sky with vibrant colors, and there, on that simple porch, 2 tired hearts found a little peace. The reconstruction of the bank continued, but a quieter, more intimate reconstruction was also taking place. The reconstruction of the hope that life still held beautiful chapters yet to be written. 6 months had passed since that transformative day at the Hope Bank branch. Autumn was beginning to paint the trees on Jacob's farm in shades of gold and orange, and a sense of renewal hung in the air. Not just in nature, but in every person touched by the quiet revolution that had taken place at that financial institution. Jacob woke up that Friday morning with a different feeling in his chest. It was the day of the bank's major annual meeting, an event that would bring together employees from all branches, partners, some special clients, and even members of the press. It would be the first time he would speak publicly about everything that had happened in recent months. He dressed with care but maintained his essence. Simple dress pants, a white shirt, the same straw hat he had always worn. He didn't need expensive suits or designer ties to say who he was. His story spoke for him. As he drove to Wichita, where the event was being held, his memories wandered over the past few months. So many changes, so many stories, so many lives touched. The rebuilding of the bank had been just the beginning of something much larger. He thought of Claudia and her snack bar, which was now thriving and had even hired 2 employees. She had come to thank him in person the previous week, bringing a huge box of pastries that she distributed throughout the branch. "My children are proud of me," she had said through tears. "That's priceless, Mr. Smith." He thought of Frederick, the manager from Topeka, who had resisted the changes so strongly. He was now leading a financial literacy program for young people in disadvantaged communities, volunteering on weekends. His transformation had been so profound that even his children noticed the difference. "Dad is smiling again," his daughter had said at a casual meeting. He thought of Michael and Julia. After months of working together, focused on the bank's mission, they had finally started dating. They did everything the right way. They talked to Evelyn and Rita, were transparent about their relationship, and established clear professional boundaries. And the love that had blossomed between them was genuine, based on respect and shared values. But the memory that moved him the most was of Evelyn. In recent months, their friendship had deepened. She visited the farm almost every weekend, helped him with small tasks, and they would talk for hours about everything and nothing. There was no declared romance, but there was a precious companionship that eased the loneliness for both of them. It was as if Constance, from wherever she was, had sent someone to take care of him. Upon arriving at the convention center, where the event was to be held, Jacob felt a wave of emotion. The venue was decorated with simple elegance, without ostentation. There were photos on the walls telling the story of the bank, from its founding to the present day. But what touched him most were the written testimonials from clients who had been transformed by the institution's new practices. Evelyn greeted him at the entrance with a warm smile. She was nervous, but radiant. "We've prepared something special for today," she said mysteriously. "You're going to be moved." Jacob entered the main auditorium and was impressed. There were over 300 people there, employees from all branches, clients, partners, representatives of social organizations. And on the stage, a banner with the phrase he had spoken on that transformative day: "Behind every person, there is a story. Everyone deserves to be welcomed." The event began with Rita giving a presentation on the results of the past 6 months. Contrary to all pessimistic predictions, the bank had not only maintained its profitability, but had significantly increased its number of clients. But more important than the numbers were the stories. Rita shared data on how many small businesses had been opened with the bank's support, how many families had obtained credit to renovate their homes, how many young people had received guidance to start businesses. Next, it was Evelyn's turn to present specific cases. She called to the stage some clients who had agreed to share their experiences. An elderly gentleman told how he had gotten credit to buy a tractor and modernize his small farm. A young mother recounted how the bank had helped her open a beauty salon in her neighborhood. A 20-year-old man from a humble background moved everyone to tears when he told how, thanks to a microloan from the bank, he had been able to buy equipment and now had a thriving cell phone repair business. But the most touching moment came when Evelyn called a special person to the stage. It was Mrs. Helena, an 82-year-old woman who had entered the branch 3 months earlier. She wanted a small loan to repair the roof of her house, which leaked every time it rained. At other banks, she had been turned down because of her age and lack of substantial collateral. At Hope Bank, she was welcomed. Julia had been the teller in charge. She spoke at length with Mrs. Helena, understood her situation, developed a payment plan suited to her modest pension, and approved the credit. But she didn't stop there. She mobilized colleagues who, on their own time, helped find contractors who would do the repairs at a fair price. Mrs. Helena walked onto the stage slowly, leaning on a cane but with a sparkle in her eyes that lit up the entire auditorium. In a voice trembling with emotion, she said, "I have lived for 82 years. I raised 4 children alone after my husband passed. I worked as a laundress, a cook, a cleaner. I never asked anyone for anything. But when my roof started to fail, I had no choice. And for the first time in my life, someone treated me like I mattered. They didn't look at me like a useless old woman. They looked at me like a human being. This bank gave me back my dignity." There wasn't a dry eye in the auditorium. Employees cried, clients gave a standing ovation, and even the journalists present had to discreetly wipe away tears. Jacob, sitting in the front row, felt his heart overflow. Then Evelyn called him to the stage. Jacob stood up slowly, still moved by Mrs. Helena's testimony. He walked to the center, took the microphone, and stood in silence for a few seconds, just looking at all those people. When he finally began to speak, his voice was soft but firm. You asked me if it was worth it. If it was worth risking everything, losing clients who only wanted privileges, facing criticism from those who thought we were crazy. And my answer is, it was worth every second. Because look around you. Look at Mrs. Helena. Look at Claudia and her snack bar. Look at every life that has been touched, every dream that has been made possible, every heart that has been welcomed. He paused, swallowing his emotion. When I created this bank, I had a very simple dream, that no one else would feel what I felt on that terrible day when I was humiliated for wanting an opportunity. And in the early years, that dream came true. But slowly, without me realizing it, the bank began to lose its soul. It was becoming just another institution that separates people, that judges by what you have and not by who you are. His voice grew more intense. But you changed that. Every one of you here, who chose to embark on this reconstruction, who decided to treat every person with respect regardless of their appearance, their bank account, their origin. You gave this place its soul back, and I could not be more proud. Then he looked up, as if speaking to someone who wasn't physically there. Constance, wherever you are, know that we are honoring our dream. We are doing what we always wanted, lighting the way for others, and that is the greatest success anyone can have in life. Applause erupted through the auditorium, but Jacob asked for silence. He wasn't finished yet. I want to announce something important, he said. Starting today, we are creating the Constance Smith Opportunity Fund. It will be a special fund, supplied by a portion of the bank's profits, dedicated exclusively to helping people in extreme situations, widows without resources, orphans needing to study, families in crisis. It won't be charity. It will be opportunity. It will be what I didn't have and what Constance dreamed of offering. Emotion filled the room again. Evelyn, on stage beside him, discreetly held his hand. It was a simple but meaningful gesture, of support, of partnership, of mutual understanding. Jacob continued, and I want to appoint Evelyn as the permanent CEO of Hope Bank, with Rita as the Director of Operations. They have proven that leadership doesn't come from expensive degrees or experience in large corporations. It comes from the heart. It comes from the ability to see the human behind every client. Evelyn was in shock. She tried to protest, saying she wasn't worthy of such trust, but Jacob was firm. You are exactly what this bank needs, and I will be here to support you whenever you need it. But the time has come for you to take the lead completely. Rita was also called up and she hugged Evelyn, both of them crying. The audience rose in an ovation that lasted for long minutes. When the event finally ended, Jacob stayed in the convention center lobby, talking to dozens of people. Clients came to thank him, employees shared stories, journalists asked questions. It was tiring, but gratifying. As evening fell, when most people had left, Jacob sat on a bench outside the building. He was exhausted but happy. Evelyn approached and sat down beside him. We did it, Jacob. We really did it. No, Evelyn, you did it. I just planted the seed, you made it blossom. They sat there in silence for a few minutes, just enjoying the tranquility of the late afternoon. Then Evelyn said something she had been holding back for a long time. You know, Jacob, when I met my late husband, I thought I would never find someone again who made me feel whole. I spent 8 years believing that, but in the last few months I've discovered that being whole doesn't mean having another person. It means being at peace with yourself, and you helped me find that peace. Jacob smiled. You helped me too, Evelyn. After Constance was gone, I thought the rest of my life would just be working and waiting for the end. But you showed me that there is still so much to live for, so much to build, so much to feel. It wasn't a declaration of romantic love. It was something deeper. It was the mutual recognition of two souls who had found each other at the right time, who supported each other, who became partners in the mission of doing good. Night fell gently over Wichita as they drove back, to the farm together. On the way, they stopped at Claudia's snack bar to buy pastries for dinner. The place was full of customers, soft music was playing, and the atmosphere was warm and inviting. When Claudia saw them, she dropped everything and ran to hug them. You changed my life. You changed my children's future. How can I ever thank you? Jacob smiled. Just keep making these wonderful pastries and treating your customers with the same care you treat us. That's the best thank you we could ask for." Back at the farm, they sat on the porch as had become their custom. The night was starry and the cool air carried the scent of the earth. Jacob looked at the sky and felt Constance's presence there, approving of everything, smiling wherever she was. "You know, Evelyn," he began thoughtfully, "I spent my whole life trying to build something that mattered. I saved money, bought land, created the bank. But only now do I understand what really matters. It's not what you have, it's what you do with what you have. It's not how much you accumulate, it's how much you share." Evelyn agreed, "And it's knowing that when you're gone, you'll leave the world a little better than you found it." Exactly. They stayed there late, talking, laughing, remembering, dreaming. Two hearts that had suffered, that had lost, but that had found in the mission of serving a new reason to go on. In the weeks that followed, the story of Hope Bank spread across the country. Newspapers published reports, television programs ran special features, and universities studied the case as an example of human-centered management. But none of that mattered as much to Jacob as the letters he received. Letters from farmers who were able to expand their crops, from mothers who opened small businesses and were now supporting their families with dignity, from young people who received credit to study and now had professions, from elderly people who were treated with respect for the first time in years. Each letter was carefully stored in a wooden box in his office, and whenever he had doubts, whenever weariness weighed on him, he would open that box and read, and he would remember why he kept going. Michael and Julia got married in a simple ceremony at the farm. It was a joyful moment full of love and hope. She wore a simple but beautiful white dress. He cried when he saw her walking down the makeshift aisle under an old tree. And Jacob, who was asked to be the best man, felt that life truly held beautiful surprises. Frederick brought his children to the farm to meet Jacob. "I want you to meet the man who taught me what really matters in life," he told his children. "It's not money, it's not a title, it's not power, it's making a difference in people's lives." Rita took the lead on the bank's expansion program into small rural towns, bringing opportunities to places forgotten by other institutions. Her dedication was inspiring, her ability to mobilize teams was impressive, and Evelyn, now officially the CEO, led with wisdom and heart. She made tough decisions when necessary, but always with the original purpose as her guide. The bank thrived not in spite of its values, but because of them. One spring morning, a year after that transformative day, Jacob woke up feeling something different. It wasn't pain, it wasn't fear, it was peace. A deep peace that came from knowing his life had meaning, his work had purpose, and his legacy was secure. He made his coffee as always, sat on the porch, and opened a letter that had arrived the day before. It was from a 10-year-old boy, the son of one of the bank's clients. The letter, written in a child's hand but full of sincerity, read, "Mr. Jacob, my name is Peter. My mum said you helped her make her dream of having a store come true. Now she is happy and so am I. When I grow up, I want to be like you. I want to help people. Thank you for being good. The world needs more people like you." Jacob read that letter 3 times, tears rolling down his face. They were not tears of sadness. They were tears of fulfillment, of gratitude, of completeness. He looked at the horizon, at the fields that were once dry and were now green and productive. He thought about the whole journey, every challenge, every victory, every person who had crossed his path, and he whispered a silent prayer of thanks. That afternoon he met with Evelyn, Rita, Michael, Julia, and other bank leaders. He told them that the time was coming for him to further reduce his active role, to trust completely in the team they had formed. Not because he was sick or too tired, but because he knew the bank now had a life of its own, was in safe hands, and would continue to grow and touch lives, even without his constant presence. Evelyn held his hand. "You will always be with us, Jacob, in every decision we make, in every client we serve, in every opportunity we offer. Because you didn't just create a bank, you created a legacy that will span generations." And it was true, Hope Bank had become more than a financial institution. It had become a movement, a philosophy, a living proof that it is possible to do business without losing humanity, to prosper without abandoning values, to lead with the heart. Years later, Business students would study the case. Entrepreneurs would be inspired by the model. Other institutions would try to replicate its principles. And always, always, they would come back to the story of that simple farmer who understood something that many forget. That in the end, what remains is not the money we accumulate, but the lives we touch. Jacob Smith continued to live on the farm, maintaining his simple life. He woke up early, tended to the land, received visitors, and shared stories, and whenever someone asked him the secret to his success, he would give the same answer. There is no secret. There is only a choice. The choice to see the human in every person, the choice to treat everyone with dignity, the choice to use what you have to light the way for those in need. It's as simple as that. And that's how you change the world, one person at a time. And as the sun set once more over those lands that were once just a dream, Jacob knew deep in his heart that he had fulfilled his mission. He had turned pain into purpose, humiliation into dignity, exclusion into acceptance. And that was the greatest success any life could achieve. Dear listeners, we hope that the story of Jacob, Evelyn, Rita, and all the characters who walked this path of transformation has touched your heart. If you were moved by this journey of perseverance, dignity, and purpose, please click the like button, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments what stood out to you the most. Did you identify with any of the characters? Have you experienced similar situations? Do you believe it's still possible to change the world through small acts of kindness? Every day we bring you intense stories like this one, which reveal the deepest side of the human soul and remind us that values like respect, empathy, and dignity never go out of style. We look forward to seeing you in the next episode with another story that will stir your emotions and make you reflect on what truly matters in life.